views and opinions expressed on Explorers Secrets of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Secrets of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
There we are.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 53. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Les Sinkavich. How are you doing this evening, Les?
I am doing fantastic. I was afraid that we were going to have another show starting off with technical difficulties because for whatever reason our links don't want to work right with your camera, but we got it. You got it. And you're here, you're in, we're ready to start the show. So I'm doing much better now.
Well, yeah, I mean, technical difficulties and all that aside, let's hope it goes well.
I'm sure it will. You want me to do the where to find us?
Well, we could talk a little bit if you'd like. How was your day?
Oh, my day was fantastic. Fun-filled, adventurous, But well, I'll do our usual spiel here. So you could find us on Facebook, which some of you are watching live now. You can find us on YouTube, which some of you are watching live now. You could comment under both platforms under the show, and it should populate on our end here in real time so we could communicate. So any questions you have throughout the show, please post it. Any input you have, any interaction you want to do, we welcome that. You could find us on Twitter at Explorers Group. You can find us at our website, explorersgroup.com. And yeah, that's about where you could find us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just a reminder, everybody, I can't reply to the comments, so Les will
I'll have to try and stick up or keep up with it. So good. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that I don't want people to think I'm not like wanting to respond, but I don't have the ability to.
Yeah.
So, before we do get into tonight's topic, we want to share a little something interesting that had happened, recently was published, but kind of plays into our Phoenix Lights episode. There was a headline: UFO spotted lurking over U.S. Large marine base. We got aliens, the Department of Defense told Fox News Digital. It was 29 Palms out in California. There was a large object sighted back in 2021. And 21 Palms is a weapons and tactics instructors course area. It's a very large base.
Mm-hmm.
So just some highlights on it. Basically there was a possible UFO with flashing lights filmed flying over a U.S. Marine base in 2021 that mystified witnesses. But of course, the government now claims, it was a training exercise. But if you did see the post we put up on Facebook, you do see that it is very similar to the craft that was reported for the Phoenix Lights incident. Mm-hmm. And of course, that Jeremy Corbell, he's become like he's an investigative journalist. He's been on Rogan. He's a documentary filmmaker. And basically he was, I think, the only wasn't science or military related called in over the UAP stuff for the government testimony in Congress. So basically, he said it was described to him by a witness at Camp Wilson in 29 Palms, California, as a large, silent, hovering, triangular-shaped craft. which is very similar to the silent hovering triangular shaped craft with lights witnessed in Phoenix back in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Sue Goen, a Department of Defense spokesman, had told Fox News basically it's a training course and there was training going on at the time, and that there was no UAPs tracked in that vicinity at the time. You know, I love how they switch. It's UAP now instead of UFO.
Yeah, yeah. I don't understand that either. Because unidentified flying object, unidentified aerial phenomenon,
Yeah,
right? And then there's USOs, right?
USOs.
Unidentified submergible objects or something like that.
I think it's
So
submerged.
yeah.
But then, well, you have. Well, I guess it's the modern military term for it
Mhm.
because you have like unmanned aerial surveillance, manned aerial surveillance. Uh, they have a lot more using the kind of modern acronyms for it. So I
Yeah,
guess
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's why they updated it, or maybe it's easier for them to slip UAP before it became a, um, slip
More common
UAP.
term.
Yeah, you could slip it in and people didn't recognize it or didn't understand what it was. Where if you put out a report that said UFO, people right away jump on it.
True, true. Yeah. And one thing we were talking about earlier, that you had pointed out is this was just released, but the incident took place in 2021, but it was just recently released. That's why we're just hearing about it now.
Yeah, I think it was basically until the government put out their statement on it and it got circulated to the media.
Uh-huh.
So,
Well, I think that's awesome how we literally just had a show about the Phoenix Lights. And then there is this, I mean, the picture, I actually wasn't able to get it to load into Be Live. Otherwise I would have had it, but we do have it on our Facebook page. It's very, very reminiscent to the Phoenix Lights, the image that was shot at night. This one has a little bit more coloration in the sky, but it's definitely that triangular shape. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pronounced lights that I'm able to see from it. But go to our Facebook page, Explorers Seekers of the Truth, and it's in our posts. You could scroll down and see it. It has the Fox News channel icon in the lower right. It's from Fox News, obviously. So yeah, I thought that was awesome that that actually happened or came about right after we did that show. So we definitely wanted to share that on tonight's show.
mhm.
Hey,
Yeah.
Moon Joey, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in.
Also, while you're on our Facebook page, you can check out my pictures from the SpaceX launch.
Yes, you were down in Florida last
Mhm.
week on vacation, and I was supposed to be working on the show, but I was sidetracked, and we got her done right in the nick of time, didn't we?
Yeah, nothing better than going through notes while I'm pushing a forklift around a warehouse.
Hey, man, you multitask like a champ.
Yeah. Well, with all that being said, let's get into tonight's topic.
Hmm.
Since we brought back the show, we've covered the Yeti, mini monsters, mysterious lights, vampires. So I kind of want to circle back to, one of my main interests. I know it's one of yours also,
Hmm.
interests in the paranormal.
Oh
And,
yeah.
what kind of thinking about it, it was what better way to get into a paranormal discussion with kind of targeting the one of the fathers of paranormal, or is like they say in the Bigfoot realm, the what is it, the four horsemen of
Yeah,
whatever they are. They're not as cool as Ric Flair, Arn Anderson.
Sasquatchery.
Yeah, they're not as cool as Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Ole
Of course.
Anderson. But you want to talk about guys. Yeah. So we're going to get into the, America's first ghost hunter, Hans Holzer.
Yes, yes. Yeah, Hans Holzer, like Chad had said, he was described as the father of the paranormal and America's first ghost hunter, and he was an Austrian American author and parapsychologist. He wrote more than 140 books spanning from 1963 to as recently as 2012, which those, as Chad's showing up there, Ghosts of Old Europe is one of his books, and Haunted America. Yep. And I know you got another one, don't you?
I have another one I can't
Real
find.
Hauntings, Real Hauntings, True American Ghost Stories. I have one of his books, Ghost Hunter, Hans Holzer, which covers a lot of his cases. And also, I have the one Chad has of the Ghost Stories of Europe. And then this freaking monster is a huge hardcover, Ghost, True Encounters with the World Beyond by Hans Holzer. Now, what I found ironic before we get into the rest of what I have on my notes here, we have all these books written by Hans Holzer, but none of them are really autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
None of them really tell much about Hans Holzer. They talk about his investigations.
Yeah, which I kind of got to give him credit for, especially in this modern social media. I have a television show, so I'm going to talk about myself on everything I ever,
Yep.
go for, the typical, they go to Starbucks and they're talking about their TV show or about themselves having a TV show.
Uh-huh.
Here's a guy who wrote 140 books, and out of all the books I own, I don't think there's one personal detail about him in any of these books.
Right, right. And that's what I found so frustrating when trying to put notes together for this.
Mhm.
So I'm going through all these books. Now the cases are cool. Don't get me wrong, like all the stuff that they have documented within the books, but trying to find information on the actual person we're trying to talk about was frustrating because I couldn't find anything about him. And what little excerpts that they had in the books were pretty much everything that were loosely written about him online. So I mean, of course, we had to rely on Wikipedia and other sources, like a lot we got from theguardian.com and some other online sources that kind of gave us a little bit more insight into the life of Hans Holzer. But like I was saying before, his books that he wrote spanned from 1963 to 2012, which was actually 3 years after his death. So they were some unpublished books that ended up getting published after the fact. And they covered topics from ghosts, afterlife, witchcraft, extraterrestrial beings, and other phenomena associated in the realm that he coined the other side. And he also took part with the production of plays, musicals, films, documentaries, hosted, and again, I couldn't find very much information about this television show that he hosted. Was called Ghost Hunter, obviously not to be confused with Ghost Hunters, which is still on air and I believe in its 16th season.
Somewhere around
Pretty
there.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been on for a while. But I couldn't find anything pertaining to his show. I mean, every time I looked it up, it would just go to that book.
Mm-hmm. I watched an interview with him that he did. It was a Detroit television station around Halloween. He was doing a presentation at some event, and you would think, investigative journalists, have him on TV with a live studio audience. They would want to find out who he was.
Yeah.
Basically, they rattled off parapsychologist who investigates the ghost and and then had people tell him ghost stories. There was not a
So you really learned nothing about him.
I mean, like, even his, like, they didn't even get into, like, they asked him one question about, like, hauntings, and he was kind of starting to describe, the different types of hauntings and, what his thought process was on it. And the guy, like, cut him off and is like, "Oh, well, we have give us a story." And he's just like, "I'm not really here to, like, I'm not trying to sell my book. I'm just kind of here because it's close to Halloween and I'm doing a presentation and I kind of want to, It's the thing that all clubs and venues do. They kind of push the star out to the local radio and television stations to sell tickets. And he was really trying to
Right,
just
right,
like,
right.
I think he was more prepped for an interview about him and what his work is. And they just like, oh, okay, this person in the audience has a ghost story. So now my question is, he wrote
Hmm,
books until 2012, which was what you said, 3 years after he passed away. Did he
yeah.
write them from beyond the grave?
That is a good question.
Could be.
Something we should look
Yeah.
into.
So get back into the more serious part of this, but Holzer was born in 1920 in Vienna, Austria. And he said his interest in the supernatural was sparked as a young boy by stories told to him by his uncle Henry. Now, he did go on to study archaeology, ancient history at the University of Vienna. And, around this time, you got to figure this is the early parts of World War II. Being of Jewish descent, his family decided it wasn't safe to stay in Austria, so they left the country, emigrated to the U.S. Was in New York
New York
City
City, yeah.
in 1938, where at Columbia University he had studied Japanese and comparative religion and parapsychology, which he claimed to have obtained a PhD at a school called the London College of Applied Science. Now, that has never been validated, and I did try to look up the university, and it pulls up modern names for London universities.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of universities that kind of, over the years, they kind of have a new name, fresh coat of paint. So
Yeah.
it may be,
Or like the school we went to just disappeared into oblivion.
well, no, it got a new name, got a new campus, and then disappeared into oblivion.
Right, right. So it went through several steps before it flopped.
Yeah. So
But our
now,
degrees are still worth something though to us.
I was going to say to us, but nobody else really.
Right, right.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
Now, he did go on to teach parapsychology at the New York Institute of Technology.
Mhm.
Now,
That's Go ahead.
I find it interesting. Like, here's a guy who, as a kid, I always wanted to do archaeology.
Yeah.
And then, studied like ancient history and stuff like that. And then did comparative, religious studies and, studied Japanese. Now, that may have been during World War II, so maybe more language based.
Right, right.
Maybe looking at working for the government, or maybe was working for the government at that point.
True. True. I wonder if the New York Institute of Technology still has a parapsychology class.
Duke had one here. Well, in North Carolina, Duke had one for years. I don't even know if they still have it. There was legit universities having them. There's very few.
Yeah, yeah. Good evening, Cindy. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. So, like we were talking about before, back in the 1920s, Holzer was in Vienna, Austria, but back in the 1920s was part of the golden age of occultism. So, with the end of the First World War, you had about 40 million civilian and military casualties, leaving many families with little to no answer to what happened to their loved ones. So that then spawned to them reaching out to clairvoyants and mediums to speak with the deceased and trying to get in touch with these departed or recently departed loved ones who, were taken before their time and whatnot. So they're trying to find answers because they're, hurting or whatever, and they want closure. So in the late 1920s and early 30s, there are around 250,000 practicing spiritualists and like some 2,000 spiritualist societies in the UK, and in addition to a flourishing multiculture. So in the United Kingdom, over 340 spiritualist churches and centers opened their doors to the public. They gave free demonstrations of mediumship, and they regularly performed their different uh, practices or specialties and whatnot.
Yeah. Spiritualism and clairvoyant and mediumship seem to pick up like after the American Civil War. there was a big jump in the practices and the like use of mediums and clairvoyance again, because you have tons of casualties, people die, people, during World War One, the Civil War, all these different wars, there are people that just disappear. Like,
Right.
not something paranormal or something strange, but they're just obliterated in a split second, and families, they get the missing in action, and then eventually the government says, yeah, they're probably dead, because we haven't gotten any reports that the other side has them. So now if you look at the 1920s and 1930s city of Vienna, you had the students of Guido von List, who's an basically started the trend of modern paganism as a new religion. His was Wodenism, which he had claimed was a revival of the religion of the ancient German race. And his works that were propagated through the List Society influenced the later Volkssturm groups, and through that, his influence basically into the Nazi Party, and then the SS belief in their form of paganism and Nordic Aryan descent.
Yeah, which is kind of not surprising, considering the fact that we've talked in previous shows with Germany's involvement in the occult and extraterrestrial technology, like with the bell. What was it called?
Die Glocken.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not surprising that would be respawned or reformed in Germany during that time. But not only was that the rise of modern paganisms and different pagan religions, you also have the introduction to Eastern yoga, other spiritual practices like Buddhism, Hinduism. You have members of the Tool Society operating in those areas during those times.
Yeah, when you look at like the Tool Society, which was originally this study group of German antiquities, it was a German occultist group founded in Munich shortly after World War One. It's named after the mythical northern country in Greek legend. Society, it was notably and chiefly as an organization, was the Arbeitspartei. Yeah, I had to look that up, and
You did it better than me.
which is for people that know history, is the DAP, the German Workers' Party, which later was reorganized by Hitler into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the common shortened form, the Nazi Party.
Yeah. Hey, good to see you, Paul. Thanks for tuning in. And Cindy has a question here. Wasn't Hitler also trying to find ancient artifacts he thought had powers? Yes, that's another great point, Cindy. That whole Nazi regime, like the party, they were trying all kinds of things to take over the world and win that war and whatnot. He was in some crazy shit.
Well, here's the thing: it's more regime than actually Hitler. It was more Himmler, the SS, the Ab Noir. Those groups were more into the occult and trying to find the these artifacts, the different things that would prove the Aryan group being real, or stuff like that. Hitler was very just weird. I've had, within the last couple of months, have read pretty much every close person to him book about him. The World War II kick, it started with Bloodlands, which is an awesome book. But he was not, he himself was not as directly involved in all that. In fact, he basically kind of stunted the growth of the SS and Himmler's Teutonic Knight Society, and basically just called it, men dressing up and playing. Basically, the modern term would be LARPing. So, yeah, it was more of the regime than Hitler directly.
Nice. Well, that answers that. Thank you, Chad, and thank you, Cindy, for that question. But back to Holzer, because that Hitler and the occult with the Nazi regime, like you were saying, that could be a whole other show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could dig really deep into rabbit holes with that. Which good topic. I think we should run with that. So back to Holzer. For a time, Holzer worked in the show business, writing comedy sketches and produced a musical, Hotel Excelsior, before resuming studies in comparative religion and parapsychology, as we mentioned before. He became convinced of an afterlife. Having visited mediums and spent time in allegedly haunted houses, Holzer became fond of using psychic mediums in his research. Though most of his research was done scientifically, he used mediums in his research as, I guess, maybe like a counterpoint, I assume. And many can, argue the validity of mediums and psychics in their abilities and its correlation to scientific research. I mean, myself included, I'm very skeptical of a lot of quote unquote mediums or psychics and stuff like that. I think a lot of them are just good bullshitters. They're con artists, and they know trigger words and easy ways to kind of manipulate a topic or a conversation to get to where you think that they are telling the truth. Some, I think, actually do have legitimate something going on, but I would say the bulk of them, to use it scientifically, that's walking a fine line. But he worked with well-known trance mediums such as Ethel Johnson Myers, Sybil Leek, and Marissa Anderson. Holzer came to the conclusion that ghosts occur wherever a great tragedy has left an unfortunate person hung up between the spirit worlds and this world, basically unable to proceed due to the inability to free themselves from whatever emotional turmoil they were experiencing at the time of their death. So Holzer has been credited with creating the term the other side, but that was already used, however, in the 19th century spiritualism. So, but in the full context, it would be the other side of life. But he's sometimes credited with having coined the term ghost hunter. But that was also the title of his book, which I have here, Ghost Hunter. And that was published in 1963. And in an earlier book by Harry Price, published in 1936, was titled Confessions of a Ghost Hunter. So I don't know how he could be the one who coined the term when it was done like 30 years prior. But whatever, they say he coined it. And in 1970, Holzer published a study of spirit photography called Psychic Photography, Threshold of a New Science. The book included photographs taken by the spirit photographer John Myers.
Yeah. Now, as a side note with John Myers, and kind of pulled this off Wikipedia, he had worked as a dentist in London and took up spirit photography in 1930. And he claimed to communicate with a Native American Indian spirit guide called Blackfoot. I don't know if he was talking to the whole group or just a specific one.
Right.
Now, he was exposed as a fraud in 1932 by the Marquis of Donegal during a seance with an art editor for the Sunday Dispatch journalist Hannah Swaffin and magician William Goldston. Marked plates were secretly inserted into Myers' camera. Myers, during the seance, developed the photographs. Two of the plates contained extras that were not marked. Myers was accused of substituting plates, and the psychical researcher.
Physical.
Huh?
Physical.
Oh, you can see my notes better than I can.
Yeah.
Researcher.
I have mine enlarged. That's why. I can't read it either.
Got to get my glasses.
Yeah, I know. We're hitting that age.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Uh-huh.
Edmonds wrote that Myers was detected in the fraud by Lord Donegal, whose report published in the Sunday Dispatch brought the career of the medium photographer to an abrupt conclusion. Now, according to Harry Price in 1935, Myers was accused of fraud by J.B. McKinno, the president of the Spiritualist National Union. That's a great group. Now, the spiritualist Maurice Barbanel, editor of Psychic News, defended Myers in a book and considered his phenomenon to be genuine.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the stuff, and it's sketchy at best.
Well, is 100 when, and again, I apologize. I wasn't able to get any kind of decent imagery to put in here, and for whatever reason, when I tried to upload it into the BeLive image bank, I just kept getting errors for some reason, so I couldn't get it in time for the show. But if you look up that guy's name online, you can see a lot of his John Myers. You can see a lot of his images. It's double exposure. Is all it is. So you know what I mean? It was pre-exposed and then just re-exposed, and now you have your double exposure. And it was very common back then, and a lot of people easily fell for the con, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, the equipment back then, the fact that he was a dentist by trade,
Right.
not necessarily a photographer, you know, so it's kind of like one of those things where even some of it could be accidental, you know, where he didn't know any better. Because you see, I mean, go on Facebook and you can find 100 photos of ghost and stuff, and it's like it's I just saw one on one of the Gettysburg paranormal groups, which is just infuriating. It's lens flare. They're taking a photo and you can see the green dot from the flare in the photo, and then the next picture they take, it's not there. Oh, it's got to be a ghost. No, it's lens flare, because you can actually see a little bit of it.
Right, and the reason why it's green is because it goes through the anti-glare coating that's on most lenses.
Yeah.
Which creates that green. It's just like on your eyeglasses. Like my glasses here, if I look at them in a certain light because of the anti-glare coating, it has a green hue to it. Same with a camera lens. It's a nano coating or whatever you want to call it, like for Nikons, which is why the expensive lenses have the N stamped on the side of them for the coating. But you're right. And then they try and pass it off as something else. But anyways, Holzer believed in life after death and the existence of ghosts or spirits and stay-behinds, which, according to him, ghosts left an imprint in the environment, which could then be picked up by sensitive people. Now, if you take the number of people who claim to have seen a ghost, there must be a lot of sensitive people out there, you know. Because a lot of people, oh, I'm not as sensitive, but if you saw it and they're claiming that, you know what I mean? So there's got to be more sensitive people than are given credit. So, but anyways, spirits are intelligent beings who could interact with the living, while stay-behinds were those who found themselves earthbound after death. Or I guess if you think about it, the stay-behinds could be like a reoccurring haunting.
Like a residual,
yeah, where it would just constantly play over because it's bound to that or imprinted into that environment.
Yeah, it's weird because some of his terminology, again, not being able to find like a glossary for what and how he used these terms.
You would think that would have been in one of his books.
Yeah, because like I've heard him like stay behinds kind of mention like a residual, but then also almost like a purgatory type or a refusing to go to the light type thing or waiting for the light. Yeah, they had unfinished business or emotional, you know, trauma that they had to work through. So they kind of stayed in an area throughout, you know, history, and But at other times, yeah, it did sound kind of like he was referring to like a residual haunting, like
Right.
seeing the person walk across the hallway.
Right. Because if you think about it, wouldn't they all be a stay behind at that point? Like if it wasn't a residual haunting,
Mm,
what else? You know what I mean? If you're seeing a ghost or you're experiencing, like something was obviously left behind. But
yeah. Yeah, some
that's
part is a stay behind, whether, again, like I said, without a glossary of how to use these terms, it's kind of,
right. And it could just be, the this is back in the 60s, and it's new terminology, and just like UFO. Stay
Mhm.
behind then morphed into residual haunting, UFO morphed into UAPs, you know. But back to the topic here. He believed in reincarnation and the existence of different levels of consciousness. Holzer and his wife, Countess Catherine Genevieve Bolhovenden, a sixth generation descent of Russian Empress Catherine the Great. They had two daughters, and the marriage was eventually dissolved. But before we move on, we got a couple comments coming through, and I appreciate that, everybody. Cindy says, I think mostly, she's referencing psychic mediums. I think mostly a way to make money off people who are desperate to hear from a loved one who has passed on. Not to say none of it may be true. I completely like the Long Island medium. There's another one on Netflix. I can't remember the kid's name. He's a young guy, kind of feminine guy.
Chip
Talks
coffee.
to no, not Chip. No, young guy. I said.
I know. Had to throw, had to throw that jab out there occasionally.
Well, even him, you know what I mean? It's kind of and I hate to say it because I think some of them truly do have good intentions, but I think a lot of them, as Cindy said, are more parasitic and feeding off of the emotions of people who are longing for that one that they lost.
Well, here's the thing. In my family, there's, some people that have certain abilities or, since have passed away. They didn't do it for money.
Right.
So if you're doing it for money, to me, again, it goes back to what Cindy said. You're just doing it to profit.
Right.
And, like that John Edwards that had that TV show Crossing Over or whatever, they used to
Mhm.
hand people a questionnaire before the show and ask like
Right.
general questions. Well, here's the thing. Let me play, medium here. Somebody lost a loved one. It's a man. Well, everybody's lost somebody in their life who's male by the time you hit a certain age, and these people are playing to certain, like after a war. You just get some general information like, hey, they were in France during this time frame. So
Right.
I'm seeing forest with trenches, and I'm hearing loud cracking sounds and screaming. Well, I just described basically trench warfare
Right.
in any war. So
Right.
now all of a sudden you're like, oh, Johnny was in France, and the Ardennes forest, and you know it's so easy to kind of throw some of these things out there, and you're going to, if you're in a room of 50 people, if I say I'm sensing a male, I'm probably cutting the 50 down to 25.
Right. And then you keep drilling down. It was like the name starts with an A or a B or
Yeah.
whatever. And then, you could start thinking, is it, and then somebody will yell out a name, or a lot of them, which I can't remember the name of the show, but they were exposing people like that, where the psychic had an earpiece. And because people were filling out those general
Yep.
questionnaires, when you would get to a certain point, they'd be like, row 5, seat 17, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They're like, you over there, do you? And then they'd be like, Arthur. Was
Yeah.
his nickname Artie? You know what I mean? Or something like that,
There was a movie, and I can't remember the name of it. It was on like Tubi at one point, but it had Martin Friedman played Holmes in the Sherlock TV show with Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
And part of the show was he was debunking, psychic mediums like the John Edwards types that do the room readings. And
Mhm.
the guy had the earpiece in that was hidden, and they were feeding him, like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
it's the lady with the pink shirt on, and he'd kind of
Yeah,
start focusing himself towards that side of the room, and then be like, well,
yeah, they do that. Oh, I'm
yeah,
well, they're listening, but they're reading the
yeah,
psychic energy, but they're listening to their counterpart.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
think,
it's bullshit.
yeah, and I mean, I've like when I was a kid, one of my mom's friends could do the table levitation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he taught me how
Like
to do it.
legit or okay, all right.
It's
That's
all
what I
bullshit. It's all bullshit.
smoking.
It's also like
But,
when you watch, like karate people break boards.
mhm,
I taught a girl in college who was a gymnast. Her parents were gymnastic coaches from Romania. I taught her
mhm,
how to break cinder block caps in 5 minutes.
mhm.
No training whatsoever. Had her do it as part of one of my speech classes, and she went out and did it, no problem. She was like 100 pounds. She broke a cinder block cap in front of everybody after 5 minutes. So it's all
You're good.
it's all hokum. It's not,
Yeah,
but yeah, these mediums and stuff like that. I mean, again, I don't discount all of them because I've talked to people who I've never met before.
right.
Had a conversation where they started giving me details that other people even wouldn't know that there was interest in these subject matters,
Mhm.
and they were giving me details about this in just random conversation, and then be like, oh, I could tell you, had some kind of interest in this. And it's like, I'm sitting on a bench,
Right.
in the middle of a town with nothing on that says like, hey, World War II student or, Civil War enthusiast, nothing, just like random places, that people have given, but for free, not
Yeah.
give me $20 and I'll tell you something.
Right.
And they, the old joke of, well, if they were so good, they'd win the lotto every night.
Right, yeah. Like that, what was her name? Miss Cleo or something like that.
Miss
Then
Cleo.
she ended up going bankruptcy and losing her business.
Yeah.
She didn't see that coming, did she?
Or maybe
Well,
she did.
actually, going back, yeah, or maybe she's like, I'm tired of all this now. I wanna be done with it.
She probably wasn't even,
Bankruptcy.
she probably wasn't even Jamaican.
Probably not. Probably not. It's all staged.
Yeah.
But going back to some of the comments here, going back to when we were talking about double exposures and spectral photographs, Moon Joey says like the new AI applications and stuff can now create some really good fake ghost images. Ghosts, and I've been seeing a lot of old or what look to be old pictures from like India with these giant people and stuff like that. I've seen a lot with supposed old photos of Native Americans with these giant Bigfoot and stuff like that. I mean, they look pretty damn realistic, but they're not.
Yeah. Well, I listened to Kurt Cobain sing um Like a Stone by Audio Slave.
Hmm.
It's completely AI generated, but it's Kurt Cobain singing a song that came out 10-15 years after he died.
Well, look at when they do the holograms with Tupac and stuff during live shows, and he's singing along and moving and interacting with the other, guests on stage. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like technology is just ridiculous now. But
Yeah.
another good point that or topic question that comment Moon Joey had made is he said a few years ago he went to a séance at Bloody Mary in New Orleans, and he completely made up his cover story, and the medium rolled with it hook, line, and sinker. So therein lies another way. Like you could make something up completely, and they're just following triggers that they think they're throwing at you. Well, he obviously did the bait and switch. But
Yeah.
hey, Rick, good to see you, buddy, and hello, Alicia. See you tuned in there. But
Yeah.
anyways, back to you to the next segment.
Yeah. Now, according to a write-up of Holzer's obituary on the Guardian.com, Holzer always disliked the word belief, which he regarded as a uncritical acceptance of something that cannot be proven. And the word disbelief, which he felt was very dismissive. Imagine that. You add the dis before that and it becomes dismissive.
Right, that's right.
He viewed organized religions as corporations that took people's hard-earned money and attempted to frighten them. After proving to his own satisfaction that Jesus Christ was born in October in the year 7 BC, he never celebrated Christmas or attended church again. Which is always the argument of how Christianity basically borrowed, pagan holidays, repurposed them so they could sell Christianity. And now he was famously involved in the aftermath of the murders of the DeFeo family in the large colonial house in New York, the New York borough of Amityville. The mass murderer was 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo, who methodically shot dead his parents, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and for which he received a life imprisonment sentence. The subsequent residents of the house, this is the famous Amityville house, were George and Kathleen Lutz, who claimed it was haunted, and with the writer Jay Anson, produced a book, The Amityville Horror, that was followed by the successful film of the same name. Holzer's investigation of the site, he also wrote the book called The Murder in Amityville, which was a fictionalized treatment of the affair that became the basis for the movie's 1982 sequel. Now, Holzer's findings via a medium that the house stood on the site of a Chinook Indian burial ground, which was shown to be erroneous. There's no historical record of any burial ground in that area. And in fact, the Montauk Indians had originally inhabited Amityville, but Holzer was unmoved and wrote other fictional and nonfiction books on the case. So now, he was a believer in reincarnation, and Holzer claimed he could recall being present at the massacre at Glencoe, Scotland, and dedicated one of his books to the victims of Culloden, Glencoe, and Flodden. He was also a lifelong vegetarian, which is always weird because all these people that have some kind of weirdness to them are always vegetarian.
That is true.
It is. Hitler was allegedly a vegetarian also. And he was
they
a
lack
friend
the iron, I guess, right? to make that from the protein.
Yeah. Now, he was a friend of the King of Witches, Alex Saunders, and other practitioners of the Wiccan rituals. He sought the ghost of Lily Lantry at a house in St. John's Woods, North London, met a ghost in the Grenier pub near London's Hyde Park, and talked with the novelist M. Lawrence about a ghostly encounter in Chelsea and explored haunted Edinburgh. So, a couple things in there. He's one of the reasons why the whole Native American tie-in to the Amityville house murders and all has been, basically in every Amityville movie now is always the Native Americans and the I can't remember the guy's name they use in the movie. It's actually just watching an Amityville movie before the show.
It was that doctor or whatever that was because it was in the basement or whatever, that room in the basement.
The red
where
room.
Yeah,
of course. He's kind of the reason, and yet here's the thing. He names an Indian tribe. There's no record of them being there. In fact, there's no record of a burial ground being there, but yet he held fast to this conviction. Here we are, how many, 40 years later, and his conviction still wasn't proven true. So, now, one of the things Les and I have actually talked about doing is past life regression. I have a friend who does it, he said some people go in and they find out stuff. Some people, they just kind of revert back to childhood and that's where it stops. Some people have
Yeah.
this connection to something, further back. So, um,
Yeah, I'm a little nervous to do it, but I want to do it.
well, that's the thing. I always said, I'm nervous to do it. And I even talked to my friend who does it, and I was like, look, I'm really kind of nervous about it because it's like if you found out something terrible about your past life, if it's real, right? Yeah, I hope I don't find out I was a vegetarian. It'd be very hard.
That's a good one.
But like if you found out something horrible, say not vegetarianism, but say like you were part of some terrible regime, or some cult or something like that, like you come back out and you know all this information now. Like, to me, that's the weird thing. Like how it could be true. It could be just some kind of connection to cosmic memory,
How do you
So,
process that?
yeah, like how do you? It's interesting, scary. I'm willing to try it, but I'm also one of those people. I don't know if I can be put under because I'm also such a control freak on certain things. So, like, it does take a little bit for me to jump right into it. But I mean, here's Holzer who's around these people and believes he was present at something. Now, the interesting thing is there's like the past life regression, the Cathars. It was a sect of Christianity that was basically eventually killed off by the Pope. In the 60s, a whole bunch of people came forward, not in a study about past life regression or anything like that. They were getting therapy. And people throughout Europe and North America and stuff like that started telling the story about being in this village, to the point of like describing the robes they were wearing, the clothing they were wearing, how the village was set up, what happened to them up until the point of their deaths. And then other people saying, well, we buried people, 3 of them in a row right here in this field. And this is how you'll find, this is what it looks like in that time frame. So when they started doing archaeological research on this Cathar area, they didn't know what color the robes were. Like the archaeologists had no clue. They just knew there was a group of people that were here that were excommunicated. And basically there was a writ that they were heretics. So the, Pope basically had them silenced. Well, the people kept saying, oh, that we were wearing purple robes with this color trim. Well, when they started doing this, they found purple robes or the remnants of purple robes. They also found people buried 3 in a row under a certain, like at a certain point in this field, which somebody also had told them in one of these past life regressions. There was like, I think like 60 some people came forward with information in these past life
Holy
regressions.
crap.
What's that?
I said, holy crap, that's crazy. I actually kind of really want to do it now.
Yeah, I saw it years ago.
Mine will end up being something really freaking boring. I guarantee it.
I was a graphic artist back in the
yeah. And I
was the guy who drew the pictures in the books.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like there is
Rick
stuff.
has a good point there. We find out that one of us would be Jack the Ripper. That would that would actually be kind of something that I would be afraid of, to find out that I,
well, that's always
might have been.
Yeah,
that's the gamble.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always said. Like, you find out you're part of a horrible regime who,
right,
killed people in, crimes against humanity ways, and then you find out like, oh, I was part of that system, or you were a murderer, or something like that. So.
Oh, Alicia.
All I gotta say is your mom.
Oh God. Oh, Chad was a vegan chef. Yes. Yes.
I'm probably what was the Swedish chef on
Smirky smirky
Muppets?
cookie chicken.
Yeah, that would be
But,
me.
well, hey, we got 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna hop back onto the topic. But it's still with the past life regression, it's gonna be interesting, and I'm looking forward to that and not looking forward to it at the same time. So for some years, Holzer led tours of Britain, and these resulted in his book, The Great British Ghost Hunt. 3 times he received grants from Aileen Garrett's Parapsychology Foundation to carry out his own work. And once said there are thousands of houses, if not hundreds of thousands, all over the world where stay behinds or residual hauntings, as we're thinking is what he means, and ghosts and memories that won't fade, keep sharing the apartments with flesh and blood occupants.
Yeah. So just kind of quickly, he was a keen photographer through his research, and he
Mhm.
claimed to have had 50 photos of spirits. And in 1964, he obtained an image of what appeared to be ghostly monks
Hmm.
walking inside the Winchester Cathedral. And basically, the story was him and his wife were alone in the church at the time, and he was told on occasions when he saw an apparition in good lighting, or that wasn't the same story. Sorry, I'm combining two of his stories. The photo of the monks, was basically they were alone in the church and they just happened to see him, click some photos, and one of the photos actually shows what could be, you know, three monks walking, but of course, again, there's also no history of a monastery ever being in, or monks being in that cathedral or something like that. There was some weird,
Hmm.
turn on it.
You know, again, I don't want to keep stopping what we're doing here, but it kind of, I love Holzer. Like I like all the stuff that I read in his books and stuff like that. But the more you look into it, there's so many like loose ends
So many convictions that things he can't prove. Like
and questions.
his research methodology, yeah, the psychic thing, but the psychic thing is also kind of like, is that a kind of correlation type thing where I saw a male, like the time we were at the Haldeman.
Yeah.
We saw something. Now, if we had a psychic with us and they said, without them knowing what we saw, I see there's a little boy in this room. He's staying over in this corner. He's doing this, and okay, describe him to us. And that person would say, describe what we saw. Then it's
Right.
like, okay, that's
Holy
kind of
shit. They
correlates
nailed
what we're
it.
seeing. Yeah. Now, of course,
Yeah.
that's always the thing, but like I did enjoy reading a lot of his casework. Um,
Yes. Yes.
like one of the things that we experienced was that growl.
Yeah.
And one of his investigations, they had a similar sound. I did not find out about it until 2 years ago when I was reading one of his books.
Yeah.
I just have, and I sent you the message like right away, like, holy shit,
Yeah.
dude, he's describing the same sound we heard. And even the same thought process of like, oh, it's a cat. It's some kind of,
Yep.
bigger
Big
cat.
cat. It would sound like a mountain lion.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
went through the same process and couldn't find any tracks, couldn't find it. There's, it's not something, there was no tracks around the house and it was snowing,
Right.
so.
And ironically, I captured that same exact sound with a different paranormal group when I was with Prey.
Mhm.
Well, you were with part of Prey too, but you weren't
Yeah,
at
for a
that
while.
investigation at the Elks Lodge in Tamaqua.
Yeah.
We recorded the same exact sound, and the only thing all of us could come up with is it sounded like a mountain lion's growl, like that
Mm.
wow kind of thing, and bizarre,
Yeah.
bizarre.
So, I mean, that's, kind of some of the stuff is really good. Now, at one point, he had told a story that an apparition, he saw an apparition of his dead mother.
Mhm.
And almost as soon as he realized what he was seeing, she had disappeared, but he was sure it wasn't a dream because, his statement was dreams can't cast shadows. and my mom did just that, you know. So he did have some, personal stories even of seeing things and, family members and stuff like that. And he, being adventurers and, historical research, haunted houses, he had no equal in that. I mean, you have a guy who has
Right.
studied archaeology, ancient history, comparative religion, plus traveled. I mean, God, he wrote.
Oh yeah, he was called all throughout the United States and the
Yeah.
world.
I mean, the fact that he
So
wrote
he was renowned.
120 to 140 books, whether just like on the paranormal, say 120 books, and most of them, like we said, are case file books. They're not,
Mhm.
self-indulgent biographic stories. So
Yeah. Well, for anybody interested, um, Dr. Holzer's fame in the paranormal world and the many cases he covers, the Travel Channel created a show named The Holzer Files. I mean, I don't know if anybody has seen this. I know we talked about it. I love that show. And this actually comes from the Travel Channel's website about the show. It's paranormal investigator Dave Schrader, and people probably recognize him. He was in some episodes of Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. He's a bald guy, mustache and goatee, pretty cool guy, glasses. Um, he and psychic medium Cindy Kazaa, she's been in a lot of the different paranormal programs and stuff. And their equipment expert Shane Pittman and researcher Gabe Roth investigate terrifyingly true hauntings from the recently discovered case files of America's first ghost hunter, Dr. Hans Holzer. Recognized as the father of the paranormal, Holzer's 4-decade-long exploration into disturbing hauntings like the Amityville Horror House spawned legions of supernatural enthusiasts, more than 120 books, and even inspired Dan Aykroyd to write Ghostbusters. For the first time ever, Holzer's daughter, Alexandra Holzer, reopens her father's most captivating case files, along with thousands of his document letters, photographs, and hours of chilling audio and visual recordings from as early as the 1950s. Equipped with this treasure trove of paranormal knowledge and state-of-the-art technology, the team compares their findings with Holzer's to see if their modern research sheds new light on this half-century-old investigation. Now, that line right there is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed that show. I mean, you take all those shows with a grain of salt. But what I really liked about it is they read a lot of the case files. They played back the audio in the show, and he utilized the psychics. And if you watch the show and you listen to some of the recordings, he would ask questions. Again, it's almost like baited questions, you know what I mean? But he would ask questions, and the psychics would be, the spirits would be talking through the psychic, and I can't find my body and all this crap, you know what I mean? It sounds terrifying when you listen, especially because it's the old format, old tapes and
reel to reel.
recordings and stuff. Oh yeah, yeah, and it's just got that kind of like distorted audio effect to it. It's just really cool. So then this team goes out to these locations. They get in contact with the people, or I mean, obviously the descendants of in most cases, and they go to those locations. They learn about what might be happening now. They do an investigation and they compare what they caught to Holzer's files, and it's enjoyable. I really liked it. And one in particular was I want to say it was upstate New York, where there was these megaliths, I guess, kind of like these stone structures, and almost like a Stonehenge kind of deal, but here. And from what they could tell by the markings and stuff like that, it predates Christopher Columbus. It almost predates um, Native Americans, and it's very reminiscent to I guess Viking Viking-esque petroglyphs in a way, but they don't know where these structures came from, and a lot of them are aligned like in Stonehenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they think it's celestial in some way, but that was probably my favorite episode.
Yeah, and his daughter, she's continued his research into the unknown. She's also a published author and paranormal investigator along with her husband. They have a group based out of New York called the Global Investigation Organization, and it's the Hunts with Holzer. And you know,
I'd
you
like to look
speak,
into that personally
yeah,
for us. That'd be fun.
yeah, and then you know, you talk to like Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd was a huge Hans Holzer, you know, book buyer, reader, and like you said,
Fanboy.
you know, it's part of the reason why he wrote Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, he even said he became obsessed by Holzer and the greatest ghost hunter ever. You know, basically, which is what led to the writing of the movie. And you know, he himself is a spiritualist, and you know, his family, his great grandfather was a dentist who was a mystic who corresponded with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle on the subject of spiritualism, and was he was also a member of the Lily Dale Society, which was a spiritualist group. Um, you know, Aykroyd has basically been one of the few mainstream actresses who actively is, you know, part of the community with his, you know, paranormal and ufology. Um, he's, you know, a member of MUFON, and you know, what was the show, the PSI Factor or whatever. You know, so I mean, he's basically, you know, been very big into it. And I think his dad wrote a book back in like 2009 about the history of ghost, and kind of it was a history of how their family was involved in the spiritualist movement and ghost hunting and all that. And you know, he's been on Larry King Coast to Coast. He's done a lot for the community. You know, of course, anybody who's willing to put themselves out there like that is going to always get the, you know, the Razzie awards from the, you know, skeptics groups and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, here's a guy who's, you know, he doesn't need to be putting himself out there, and yet is very interested in the subject matter and jumps
Oh
out there and
yeah.
is willing to host a TV show. I mean, William Shatner does it, but I mean, kind of, you just kind of feel like it's a money thing for him.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
But you can't help but love the guy and his shows. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because he gets so
yeah, and I mean the fact that
animated. What he talks about,
yeah,
ghosts and the
yeah.
paranormal.
But you know, so it's definitely, you know, pretty cool to see like somebody, you know, somebody that shares like an interest like us, who just happens to be, you know, quote unquote famous, you know, because he's
Right.
a movie star, you know, comedian, actor, all that. So
Well, that concludes our show. We're at 9:38.
yeah, we run a couple minutes over every week.
Yeah, it gets a little bit further. So I'm seeing that there are 8 people viewing live, 7 people viewing live. Somebody dropped off. So before all you 7 jump off, please like, subscribe, share the crap out of this show. We really want to try and get our numbers up and get the algorithm viewing us and getting us out there to in front of more people. So we want to build up the show, and I'd like to start getting more guests on. Like we've had Tom Seawood from the Bigfoot Field, we had Lyle Blackburn, Jeff Walmsley from the Point Pleasant Mothman Museum. We've had Ken Gerhardt, Linda Godfrey, God rest her soul. So we want to start getting some more live guests on the show, but we need to get our numbers up in order to convince these people. So the more you people share, the more you people get us out there, the more we could do to get better guests on the show and keep the content coming. I would love to be able to get to the point where our numbers are high enough to get Dan Aykroyd on the show. So we need you guys to help us out as much as you can. Again, tonight's topic was on Hans Holzer, America's first ghost hunter, the grandfather of the paranormal, or the father of the paranormal. We truly hope you guys enjoyed it. Chad, thank you as always, my friend. I couldn't do this without you.
Well, yeah, I know.
I couldn't, because you normally write most of everything.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do it without the researcher.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But
But thank you as always, though.
so not next week, the week after we're back. Don't know what we're gonna do topic wise yet. We'll talk about that. We'll let you know. But
Yep.
thank you everybody for watching. Like Les said, if you could please share, like, subscribe, all that nice stuff. And you guys all have a great week and nice weekend, and hopefully the weather is good where you are.
Yes, that is true. Here, I have really quick before we go off. I do have a list for anybody left. Thank you everybody for saying a good show. We appreciate that. Here's a list for those people that are still hanging in. We have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which was mentioned in this show tonight, the Carbondale UFO, Houdini and the SACD collection, Hans Kemmler. We did Hans Holzer, alien tech and its supposed connection to Nazi Germany, which we kind of brought up in this show tonight. Ancient Nevada giants and the Lovelock Cave, compared to the Catalina Island Native Americans. The Dyatlov double take, how two people named Dyatlov were tied to a major event in Russia. And there's a local topic that I think, did we talk about that before? I can't remember. But if not, we could. There's always more to add to Matthias Schombacher and the haunted tavern at Hawk Mountain. For anybody in the Schuylkill County, Berks County area, will be all too familiar with Matthias Schombacher. So any of those topics that would pique anybody's interest, let us know. Get in touch with us on Facebook, YouTube, or you could get in touch with us at our website. So again, everybody, thank you so much. Chad, thank you. Good night, everyone.